What defines you? Not what happens to you, but how you respond to what happens to you. A phrase, an ancestral whisper that echoes in the emptiness of our certainties. Allow me a moment, a breath, so that together we can dive into the abyss that inhabits us. Have you ever felt the earth tremble beneath your feet, not from a physical earthquake, but from the implosion of a dream, the betrayal of trust, the loss of a piece of yourself? Yes? Then you know that life is not a garden of roses, but a battlefield where scars are the most honorable medals. But what if I told you that every wound, every tear, every sleepless night is actually the raw material for an unimaginable transformation? That within chaos lies the seed of a new order, and that poison can be distilled into the most potent elixir. This is not a journey for the faint of heart, but for those who dare to face their own shadow and discover the gold hidden in the deepest darkness. Ready for alchemy? Here I am, floating in this sea of thoughts, waves of memories colliding against the shores of my consciousness. Epictetus, the old sage, whispers timeless truths in my ear, truths that I confess I resisted embracing for a long time. I, like so many others, was a prisoner of circumstance, a puppet moved by the invisible strings of fate, luck, injustice. How many times have I clenched my fist, stifled a silent scream, felt bitterness corroding my soul? I observed the external world, the events unfolding, and placed the weight of my unhappiness, the justification for my pain, upon them. If the other person acted that way, if life denied me that, if destiny betrayed me, then I had the perfect excuse for my misery, and therein lay my greatest prison, the belief that my peace was a hostage to others' whims, to the caprices of the universe. But the truth, the harsh and liberating truth, is that life, in its most naked and raw essence, is a stage where events are merely the scenery. The real drama, the play that defines who we are, unfolds internally in our reaction to those events. It's as if every experience, whether a stolen kiss or a stab in the back, were a chemical reagent dropped into our inner vessel. The question is not the reagent itself, but the mixture it creates in our essence, the way we allow it to transform the composition of our soul. And here lies the alchemy, the true magic, the ability to take the lead of pain and transmute it into the gold of wisdom, resilience, and compassion. Think with me, or rather, feel with me. That unexpected dismissal, that diagnosis that shakes your foundations, the end of a love that seemed eternal. What came first? The shock, the denial, the anger, the sadness, valid feelings, legitimate human reactions. But what comes next? It is in that next that alchemy manifests itself. It's in the choice, conscious or unconscious, of how we process this storm. Some drown in the waters of self-pity, others petrify into the marble of bitterness. But there are those, the rare, the courageous, who see in the flood an opportunity to build a new dam, stronger, more robust. In petrification, the chance to sculpt a new form, more beautiful and resistant. It's a process of stripping bare, removing the layers of expectations, the illusory garments of a control we never truly possessed. Life owes us nothing. It doesn't owe us ease. It doesn't owe us perfect justice. It doesn't owe us prefabricated happy endings. It simply is. And we, finite and imperfect beings, are called to be in response. The true art is not in avoiding pain, that's a chimera, but in dancing with it, in understanding it, in extracting what is most valuable from it. Pain, viewed in this new light, is not an enemy, but a teacher. A stern teacher, it is true, but one who teaches us lessons that calm could never. It is in the darkness that our eyes adapt to see the faintest light. It is in silence that we hear the deepest voice of our being. Adin, the narrative of my own journey is subtle, like the current of a river that, even invisible in its depth, shapes the surrounding landscape. There was a time when my heart was a labyrinth of closed doors, each guarding a wound, a resentment, a fear. I lived under the yoke of an if only. If only that hadn't happened, if only I had acted differently, if only the other person had understood. This if only was my executioner, the whip that prevented me from moving forward. One day, however, exhaustion became an unexpected ally. Tired of fighting against the winds, I decided to turn the sails. Not to surrender, but to navigate with the current. It was an act of blind faith in the unknown, an abandonment of the need for control. Life presented me with a monumental setback, one of those that undo plans and rewrite the future in illegible letters. For a while, I was just dust, particles scattered in the wind, without form, without direction. But it was in that pulverization that something new began to settle. I began to observe my thoughts not as absolute truths, but as fleeting clouds in the sky of my mind. Anger rose, and I saw it. Sadness came, and I felt it, but without drowning in it. A subtle yet abyssal distance began to form between the observer and the observed. This distance, this space, was my alchemical laboratory. There, without the pressure of judgment, I began to dissect my reactions. Why this anger? Where does this sadness come from? What is this circumstance, however painful, trying to teach me? I realized that many of my reactions were conditioned, programmed by old wounds, by ancient fears, by an insatiable need for external validation. I was an echo of the past, not the authentic voice of the present. This epiphany was painful, yes, but also profoundly liberating. It was as if the invisible chains that held me captive became visible, and upon seeing them, I could finally begin to undo them. The art of transforming adversity into growth is not a magic trick, but hard, meticulous, patient work. It is like the goldsmith who, to shape the precious metal, must subject it to intense heat, to relentless hammering. Every blow, every flame does not destroy the gold, but purifies it, strengthens it, molds it into a new and more beautiful form. So it is with us. Every setback, every challenge is a forge, and what emerges from it is the most authentic, strongest, most luminous version of who we truly are. It's not about denying pain, ignoring suffering. That would be a cowardly escape. It's about embracing the totality of the human experience, feeling the pain, mourning the losses, allowing vulnerability to pass through us. But then, rising, with eyes perhaps tear-filled, but with a strengthened soul, with scars showing, but with an open heart. This is true courage, not the absence of fear, but action despite it, not the absence of pain, but the dance with it. Emotional and spiritual alchemy is a continuous process, not a final destination. There is no point where we can say, "There, I have achieved mastery, now nothing can shake me." That would be a dangerous illusion. Life is flow, movement, constant renewal. But what we can achieve is an inner calm, a serenity that transcends the waves of the surface. It's like being a lighthouse in the midst of a storm. The waves may violently crash against its base, but the light at the top remains firm, unshakable, guiding the ships. Developing this conscious response capacity is daily training. It begins with awareness, paying full attention to our thoughts, our emotions, our physical reactions to each event. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can create a small but vital space between stimulus and response. In that space, our freedom resides. There we can choose whether to feed anger or understanding, choose whether to cling to the past or open ourselves to the future, choose whether to victimize ourselves or empower ourselves. It's an act of personal responsibility, not in the sense of guilt, but of responsiveness. I am responsible for how I receive what life delivers to me. And in that responsibility lies my power. I cannot control what happens out there, but I am the sovereign of my inner world. It is here that I forge my armor, sharpen my sword, create my shield. And this armor is not to isolate me from the world, but to allow me to face it with courage and compassion. Resilience, that word so in vogue, is merely the byproduct of this alchemy. It is not an innate characteristic of a lucky few. It is a developed skill, a muscle that strengthens with exercise. And the exercise? Adversities, challenges, falls. Each time we get up, each time we learn from pain, each time we forgive ourselves for our imperfections, we are strengthening this muscle of the soul. Growth, therefore, is not linear. It is a spiraling cycle where we revisit old themes with a new perspective, where lessons deepen and understandings broaden. There is no end point, only a process of continuous transformation. And the beauty lies precisely in this, in the journey, not the destination. In the journey of becoming each day, a little more whole, a little more conscious, a little more free. True wealth is not in what we accumulate, but in what we are capable of creating from what life presents us. It is the art of weaving a vibrant tapestry with the colorful threads of joy and the dark threads of sadness. It is the music that arises from strings stretched by tension and relaxed by melody. It is the sculpture that emerges from the raw marble block, revealing the form that lay dormant within it. I remember a story, perhaps a parable, that deeply moved me. An old gardener planted seeds in his garden. He had no control over the weather, whether it would rain or be excessively sunny, whether pests would come or if the soil would be fertile in all places. But he had control over how he cared for each seed, how he watered, how he pruned, how he protected the seedlings. And so he saw his plants flourish, not because the conditions were always perfect, but because his response to the conditions was constant and dedicated. We are those gardeners. Our hearts are the soil. Our experiences are the seeds. And the way we react, how we cultivate, how we care for ourselves in the face of what is thrown at us, that is what determines the harvest. We can choose to plant the seed of bitterness and harvest the weed of resentment. Or we can choose to plant the seed of resilience and harvest the fruits of wisdom and compassion. The choice is always ours, even when external conditions seem to rob us of all freedom. Freedom, after all, is not the absence of shackles, but the ability to choose how we move within them. It is the inner freedom that no one can take from us, except ourselves. It is the last refuge of human dignity, the inexhaustible source of our strength. And it is in this freedom that true alchemy resides, the ability to transform any adversity into a springboard to a new level of being. It's not about blind optimism, about painting the world pink when it's gray. It's not about denying pain, I repeat, but about moving through it consciously. It's the courage to feel the wound and still find the strength to heal it. It's the wisdom to recognize the darkness and still seek the light. It's the humanity to allow oneself vulnerability and still emerge stronger and more connected. This journey, mine and yours, is an invitation to profound self-observation, self-acceptance, and self-transformation. It is a call to stop being a victim of circumstances and become the artisan of your own soul. It is to understand that life is not made of isolated events, but of an intricate web of causes and effects, where our reaction is the most powerful thread we weave. And what happens when alchemy manifests? What is this transformative payoff? It is the discovery of a peace that depends on nothing external. It is the ability to love and be loved more deeply because you have freed yourself from the chains of fear and control. It is creativity that flourishes even in times of crisis. It is compassion that extends to others because you have understood the universality of suffering and overcoming. It is, above all, the feeling of being whole, of being aligned with your highest purpose, of living with authenticity and courage. You become the art itself, a work in constant evolution, shaped not by luck or chance, but by your conscious response to life. You become living proof that the human spirit is unbreakable, that resilience is a gift to be cultivated, and that, ultimately, the greatest treasure is not out there, but in the depth of who you choose to be, moment by moment, in the face of every alliance and every challenge. So I ask you again now, with a slightly calmer voice, a little more full of quietude, what will you do with the next storm that approaches? Will you take shelter in fear or dance in the rain, transforming each drop into a promise of a new beginning? The choice is yours, it always has been, and in it lies your greatest power.